Where do you learn to be a better advisor, to be a better accountant? And it's not all about technical skills.
The brand of accounting, I've heard, as you have, the non-financial incentives are waning a little bit. The new generation coming through, the junior talent. Your firms, you've been on the record.
They 100% do. I think I've got a teenager trying to explain to them that just going to work at Apple or Google, and that's what you're competing with today. Whereas 20, 30 years ago, people saw accountancy as one of the careers.
One of the concerns, well, multiple concerns about the outsourcing: quality, trust, data security.
And you do that by just running a very professional enterprise. But how do you do that? You have external audit coming in, assessing what you're doing.
Firms are driving for growth, particularly if they've got PE involvement or they've got hungry shareholders.
Yep.
But if they're unable to take on the new clients,
A third, about 37% saying that they're not taking clients on, or they're struggling to take clients on. It's impaired, certainly. That would be the term that would be appropriate.
This is the Accounting Voices podcast. We're talking talent today, and there's so much happening in the world of talent. We're giving you the ammunition and the insights you need to make good decisions in your career and your firm. And I'm really pleased to have a special guest with us today, Vipul Sheth from Advancetrack Outsourcing, who has the stories and the numbers and the research and the data to back everything up and knows the talent base very, very well. Vipul, good day to you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Vipul, what are the everyday warning signs inside accounting firms that tell us that the talent crisis is still biting?
Yeah, no, well, I mean, the red flags that both anecdotally, but rather than it being anecdotal, we actually did a survey. Now we're in year 2 of the Accounting Talent Index.
Yes.
And what we're hearing consistently across all of this is partner workloads are increasing, reluctant to take on new clients, staff being burnt out, and just client delivery, cracks starting to show. And this is not just in here, around the world. And that's the key that I take away from all the conversations that we're having, but more importantly, the detailed research that my team have undertaken.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about this research, because this, as you say, so much anecdotal evidence, so many stories. You talk to many leading accounting firms, so you get a picture of what's on the inside, but getting the hard data to back it up, that's something extra.
It certainly is. And what we've done over the last couple of years is actually have real partners in accounting firms around the world giving answers to questions that we pose. And then it's about collating that data and then interpreting it in a way that's then useful, because we could produce graphs, pictures, lots of commentary, but let's get down to brass tacks. What does it mean to firm owners and the way we need to be looking at how they're running their business, both now, but in the next 5-10 years, from what the data's then going to show.
Well, give us some headline stat on what's happening with the talent shortage. Have you got any percentages, any hard facts for us?
Yeah, I mean, 40% firms say the impact of the talent shortage on them is very significant or severe. When you've got, last year it was 45%, so slight easing compared to last year. It's still biting. And actually, this year, what we did was we broke down the data between large firms and smaller firms. And the larger firms had less of a problem. Didn't mean they didn't have one. It was just less of a problem. And we'll talk about this through the however long we have today. But they've been investing in things which is now paying off for them. Because a smaller firm done it, or they're looking carefully at budget, perhaps haven't made the same investments that some of the larger firms have. But yeah, overall, when you get 40% of firms saying impacting them significantly or severely, pretty large number.
Yeah, and you hinted earlier that client delivery is falling. I've heard stories of accounting firms saying if we don't hire more staff soon or get more capacity, we will not be able to deliver on our promises to clients, and we will not be able to take on new work. So have you got any stats there about client commitment?
Yeah, I mean, 46% of the leaders that took part in this survey say they're struggling to deliver on client commitments. Rob, I'm sure you also talk to lots of accounting leaders, and how many times have I heard accountants say, I daren't go to a client meeting because I'm eating some work. I can't deliver it. Yeah, and it shouldn't be that way. Yeah, really, to support their client firms. And genuinely they want to. They're just conscious that if they actually sat down with a client, inevitably from that conversation, they unpack problems, challenges that the client wants help with. And they know that as much as they would like to help them, they just can't. And that is causing them anxiety, it's fair to say.
Possibly worse, Vipul. We hear stories in the news of audit errors and tax miscalculations and work starting to go wrong. You talked about the cracks appearing. So if you are short on capacity and you people are frazzled and you haven't got enough to go around, then you're going to get these kind of errors too, aren't you?
Well, look, we're all human and tiredness feeds that. How many times do we in our life that we do this, that whether we're driving or whether we're doing accounting work, we're tired, we're not going to be as safe at the wheel, so to speak. And that's so important that we look after ourselves, business owners, business leaders, but also our people, that they feel are able to actually switch off from work when the time is there to take.
And a lot of firms are driving for growth, particularly if they've got PE involvement or they've got hungry shareholders. But if they're unable to take on the new clients that they want, that presents problems, because part of growth is getting rid of clients you don't want and building in more profitable service lines. So how many firms are we talking about that are saying their ability to take on new clients is being impaired?
Over a third, about 37%, saying that they're not taking clients on or they're struggling to take clients on. It's impaired, certainly, would be the term that would be appropriate.
Well, the viewers, listeners of this podcast, we give them the information, Vipul, that helps them make decisions, not just on their own career, but where the firm is going. And they want to know what they can do now, not just the size of the problem. So we're painting a picture here that there is a problem. Talent shortage is still impacting firms, and we want to give them practical solutions if we can. So how can firms rethink talent attraction and retention in the most practical ways?
Yeah, I mean, all I would say is don't show them the John Cleese video about accountants, because that did a disservice in many ways to what accountants do, etc.
But the younger viewers, John Cleese and Monty Python did a sketch where he was a careers advisor and somebody wanted to not be an accountant. So yeah, look at that on YouTube. But yeah, to your point, people, in today's crazy world, what do we do?
Yeah, so a lot of firms have been using pay rises to try and solve the problem. I think somewhere about 43% been using pay rises to try and retain or recruit talent. And that has it helped enough? I'm not so sure. But as we know, post-COVID, flexible working has been a factor in encouraging people to stay or join a firm. You know, we hear many people that are recruiting say, oh, unless all of these things are available, I'm not going to join. And that presents a challenge to businesses when ultimately accountancy is a people's business. It's about engagement with clients, engagement with colleagues, and particularly in the early stages of your career, where do you learn to be a better advisor, to be a better accountant? And it's not all about technical skill. It is about that ability to engage at a human level with people. So I think there's that career development and ultimately quality of the work that you're having to do. If you've got interesting clients, you've got interesting work to do, you're going to say, yeah, great, this is what I want to do. And we can see 42% of firms are investing in training. Yeah, inevitably help. But having been a trainee a long time ago now, Rob, but the bit that I enjoyed the most, particularly as you're turning this into your career, is actually meeting the entrepreneurs that are doing these businesses, that are doing really interesting things. But they then tell you what their aims and ambitions are, what their challenges are, and just being around those people and the more experienced people in the business, whether that's managers, senior managers, partners, that's what really gets you engaged and wants you to stay in the profession.
You're speaking here to the brand of accounting. I've heard, as you have, the non-financial incentives are waning a little bit. You know, those flexible working and extra leave and things like that. They're more cosmetic than anything else because it comes down to budget. But when we talk about the new generation coming through, the junior talent, firms, you've been on the record here, need to tell a more compelling career story, don't they?
They 100% do. I think when there's a youngster coming through and I've got a teenager, trying to explain to them that just going to work at Apple or Google, and that's what you're competing with today. Whereas 20, 30 years ago, people saw accountancy as one of the top careers. If you look at every report that comes out around AI, where it says which jobs are going to be replaced by AI, and accountants is consistently in the top 5, they look at other things and say, and also they look at the money. 30 years ago, it was the big bang in the city where, you know, whether it's in London, Wall Street, etc., but big financial center, that you could make more money working for one of the big banks. Today, it's a bit of that. There's also the Googles, the Facebook, all of those sorts of businesses that are equally looking for bright young talent. Yeah, they're saying, well, shall I do accounting or shall I go and do something like this? And actually, what we really should be doing is showing them what an accountant can do and what impact that they have beyond the stereotype that, unfortunately, we've not been so good at actually selling to them. And I think that's so important that we do that.
It's an excellent point. We can all tell a better story about. There are tough times in the job. There are grinds and busy seasons and things like that where it's head down and the work is hard. But ultimately, it is a very rewarding career and it is making such a difference in the world of business. So I take your point. We're competing for jobs. We did an excellent interview with your CTO at Advancetrack, Ian Gregory, Vipul, recently, a very knowledgeable individual. Obviously, you know him very well. He leaned into the AI as a potential solution, but it's not the ultimate solution, is it?
Look, we can't escape the fact that technology moves on. We've been in business for 2003. We built our first cloud platform back in 2005, 2006, and we've done multiple iterations of that, and the world will continue to change. And so it should. At one point there was a quill pen, and then there was the abacus, and we moved on to the calculator. So then computers came along. So look, the world will not stand still, but it's about making the profession relevant, the jobs within the profession relevant. And if AI enables those people to do a better job, faster job, more interesting work, that's not a bad thing to do. But what the research is telling us is only 13% of firms actually think they're going to reduce headcount as a result of AI. So what that says is that, well, there's a pretty significant majority that is saying we're going to recruit more. So of the 87%, I can't remember the exact numbers. At some point, I'll happily share your ability to go and download the report. But of the 87%, about half are saying they'll need to recruit more, and half are about the same. But when you look at the demographic that is happening, more people are leaving the profession in the Western world than are joining. So that means even if you're going to stay level, you're going to have to find additional talent from somewhere. That's really an important thing to think about.
This is where Advancetrack comes in, because the use of third parties, whereas many years ago, you've been in this game a long time, there was a stigma attached to it, and there were early adopters that went for it, but a lot that didn't, or waiting and seeing. It's now acceptable business practice to look at outsourcing as a really viable solution. Are we at the point, Vipul, do you feel where it's becoming inevitable?
I never think anything's inevitable, because firms are run differently, and it depends on the type of work that a firm does. Some is more people-led, some is more compliance-led. So whether you're an advisory or you're a compliance business, compliance is still a huge part of most accountancy business. It's your ability to engage on a regular basis with your client, and that surfaces up lots of opportunities and talk to them about their problem. And as a result, because that's there, and the talent shortage is not disappearing anytime soon. About a third of firms are using offshoring, not far off that are using outsourcing. So it's becoming a more acceptable practice. And whereas people perhaps just were silent, people are quite open telling business owners and they're like, well, of course, I ring BT or whoever it might be, your local telephone company, and somebody in another country is answering your phones or giving you iPod. So as a result, it's an accepted norm that, you know what, you're a business, you need to keep my costs down, you need to actually deliver a service to me. And if that means that you're able to deliver a better service for me, if you need to use it, just make sure that I'm looked after. I think that key, it's about client service, and actually more than anything else, looking after your people, that they're not working night and day just to look after clients, as sometimes you just don't have the ability to focus on that high value work, which client really want you to help them.
Yeah, just to summarize what you're saying here, it's definitely not niche anymore. It is mainstream, and it's moved on from being about cost savings. As you say, it's safeguarding client service, it's easing the pressure on the partners, the people, the managers, and giving you in-house that chance to focus on higher value work. We've just finished a series on our podcast on compliance to counsel, and how accountants can be more relevant by thinking beyond the basic compliance, historical looking work, and into that future looking advisory work. But if you're wrapped up in a lot of the heavy tasks that maybe outsourcing can take off, then you're always going to struggle to get into the advisory space. You work with many leading firms, Vipul. Are they doing better than the small firms? Who's best placed to bring in new staff and look at the outsourcing options?
I think larger firms, just because of their size, have more opportunities by young men and women. So I think that's a factor. They're also able to pay more. What they're also able to do, mainly because they also have live client, pay them higher hourly rate, that allows them to invest in technology and their people. And because they have that capability, what happens is they have been able to navigate these talent shortages better. They use businesses like ours to help them deliver that, and they're able to do it at scale. And what they also have above anything else, and I worked in smaller firms before I went to work for two of the big four, and what I found the key difference between the two is one has systems and one has allegedly a system, but is very easily navigated. I was trained in a firm with 4 partners. That meant there were at least 4 ways to produce a file. I worked in a global firm. They had a pretty standardized way of delivering work. And what the big firms are therefore able to do, they're able to scale their outsourcing and offshoring work much more easily. But what that means also for the smaller firms, the opportunity is immense if they were to take on the baton and run with it. Because I think if they do that, they will find that there's an opportunity for them to actually get out of the weeds and actually get in front of clients more. Well, as I said, if you go and talk to a client, they'll always tell you their problem.
Yeah, indeed. One of the concerns, or multiple concerns about the outsourcing, quality, trust, data security, just speaking to some of those, because these are mitigated now that the jury's out or in on this one, it's all good.
Well, I think like all these these things, you need some trailblazers to raise the standard. And if you do that, others have to follow. So I think, I'd like to think that we've been instrumental in helping raise standards. And you do that by just running a very professional enterprise. But how do you do that? You have external auditors coming in, assessing what you're doing. And just to give you an example, we're a regulated firm with the ICAW here in the UK, but also for the international firms who perhaps don't necessarily know who they are, or we have people like BSI, Kite Mark people come in and audit on an annual basis, sometimes more than once, just to say, right, Vipul, tell us what you've done to improve what you're doing. It's not just a question of, you told us this 10 years ago and you're still applying it today. You actually have to revisit everything on an ongoing basis. And that's about us raising the standard of what we're capable of doing, because what we did last year is no longer, it's like world records, isn't it? Yeah, you don't turn up at the Olympics and say, well, it's okay, I did, and I came in the top 10 in the world. Well, no, you want to be number one in the world. How do you do that? Self-improvement.
Yeah, sure. So just in closing, Vipul, give us a message for the leaders, the decision makers, the would-be leaders that are listening, tuning into the show here, on what they can take away from our conversation today.
I think what I would say is, look, there is a challenge with talent in the Western world. We need to be better at selling accountancy as a profession so that there is the next generation of young professionals in accounting. So I think number one, that in terms of how you're going to, that will help you make sure there's that client-facing team. Businesses like ours are there to support you. All I will say is, in terms of talent coming through, we base ourselves in India. 250,000 chartered accountants come out of India every year, and that excluding some of the other accounting bodies. So just to give you some context, that's a key metric for us in terms of retaining our operations in that part of the world, is the access to talent. But also think about what you want to do and invest in technology and invest in your people. If you do all of those things, we can support you as well, because the more technology you actually put into your firm, businesses like ours can use that technology just to drive that car a little bit faster.
That's excellent. Vipul Sheth of Advancetrack Outsourcing. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Ron.